So I want to recognize everybody who's here again. So here in the studio with me, you can see kind of on the screen, if you're on Zoom, we have Tim, and on Tim's right is Lars. They both were in class this morning, so we had a nice yoga class. And I'll just go right to that. Mercy in Zimbabwe, who was also in class today, which was very fun. Steve Rose, longtime member of EmpowerHour, who is also in class this morning. So we're all feeling the nice yoga vibe. And then the powerful and ever helpful Anjali and Vitasha, who have been continuing to be a part of the evolution of the EmpowerHour to help bring each of these into life. I see Fox is joining from his acupuncture, San Francisco acupuncture office. So thanks for being a part of this. And as always, I want to start off with kind of helping to set the tone for our EmpowerHour with some of my slides. So just give me a moment as I get that brought up to the screen. So as you all know, as we know, this is our EmpowerHour. The topic is why we don't stop believing. The journey of highs and lows between truth and traditions as seen through a yogic lens. We wish to invoke a space that is courageous and kind, filled with the power of diversity, welcoming to everyone here and beyond, supportive to feelings and emotions, inspired to take action for good efforts, and also to invoke a space that is joyful and intentional. I always feel that's important to remember because sometimes these can get heavy and get in our heads. And that is part of our human experience, but I also want to make sure we don't leave with that heaviness and we remember there is a beautiful lightness that even just coming together in community brings. I'd like us to be here with open eyes, open hearts, open minds. May this gathering provide inspiration, healing, creativity, or even just a good hour 0.25 of our time together. If you need to leave early, it's the divine will, and we're happy you could be here for any time that you have given. And let's take this moment to look around at our fellow participants to feel the miracle of being gathered in this space together. And it really is. I think I've learned, especially with the pandemic, with all that's happening in the world, not to take for granted, that we can still recognize and honor the humanity of this, all of our different lives, of all of us coming together. So I want to just look at part of what I wanted to do today was to recognize the November holidays, just briefly some of the history around Thanksgiving in particular, some of the ethics, harms, and joys, not just of this holiday season, but in life in general. Like where have we seen both the harms and joys and where we tend to get attached to stories going a certain way. And I also just wanted to go back to see this amazing graphic. So now I'm recording on Zoom. Oh, how did that picture get on? How did all these images of Steve Perry get on the screen? We give recognition to this song, Don't Stop Believin', which did just kind of come to mind when I thought about this topic. Obviously, that's such an iconic song about sort of people coming from different walks of life, but having this common interest in wanting to be able to believe in something and to be able to have faith in something. And that ability to even just say something as simple as, don't stop believing, to lift us up when we can see things in the world that might otherwise have us feel uncertain or lost or just be filled with fear. So it just felt like this is helpful, but the topic is why we don't stop believing. So it's a little twist on this where we sometimes will believe in something that's actually harmful or that's actually not true. And why do we stay attached to some of those stories? I want to honor today as Transgender Day of Remembrance. And I think this also follows right in line with a lot of what we're talking about today, which is the lack of humanity around seeing one another as a fellow human being, and how we can start to see a reason in our brains why we want to separate and segregate. and that there's actually a natural impulse in us to feel like we can be with our tribe, and then to also back away from anything that feels different. I know I've experienced that and felt that, and there's times when I've had the need to want to be closer to my tribe, but then also the need to expand and to understand the diversity and the beauty of diversity. But sometimes I think that that's a luxury of the mind, and there are some people who really are stuck in a limited way of thinking and seeing. I'll offer today, there's a trigger warning. We will be covering some topics that may be triggering. So please take care of yourself and feel free to exit or mute the sound whenever you need. The intention is to bring light to what is happening in the world in order to dispel darkness and to avoid generating the darkness, knowing that light and dark is what we have. So I want to come back to that time and time again today. It's not that I don't believe we'll ever get to this point where the world is just peace and light and love. I think we'll always have this contrast, and it's the nature of our human experience. But take care of yourself. I think it's sometimes we're able to be open to those concepts, other times we're not quite in that space. So I'll take a moment of silence in honor of that for those who were killed and those who are suffering from the Colorado Springs shooting that happened late last night and early this morning. I also want to offer a moment of silence for women, children, BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and anyone suffering all across this world who have little to no rights and risk their lives every day simply by the nature of their being different than the dominant culture. And I want to ask where in our own personal life we can relate to that feeling of being an outsider, being different than a dominant group. I think we all have this experience somewhere in our system. And that longing or that desire to want to be part of, or to feel that absence of community, and a desire to try and find that or to seek that. So just want to put that out there. Where in our own personal life can we relate to that feeling? So take a moment to think about that, and then I'll just see if anybody has any thoughts. I'll stop screen sharing for a moment. And as you may notice, we're diving right in, sort of just letting us all kind of have a personal stake in this moment where we can look at our own personal response and reaction to life and the world, and to also simply just give space to each other to share personally, maybe, something of that experience where there is that, where we felt separate, and there's that longing to be included. Anybody have any thoughts on what that meant? maybe we're not ready to dive in so quickly. I see Lars. Yeah, go ahead, Lars.
Thanks, Mark. Well, what's coming up for me today is my relationship with social media, because I've in the best of times felt really connected to a wide range of people, and then because I felt like there were such poor decisions made by Facebook and other companies over and over again, and I was affected by it, and the world was affected by it, or democracy was affected by it. I've tried to have a boundary with social media where I'm not on it anymore. And at the same time, when I stick with that belief and that boundary, I lose connection with all these people. But at the same time, I don't want the corporations to be part of the gestalt. So this is how I keep myself separate. And this is how I often feel lonely. But then I realize on the other side of the fence, being in that on social media all the time, I suffered greatly because it was an illusion of connection. It's not the same as being in the room with you. Well, not to say that you guys aren't legitimate. You're on the screen, but I really went down my own rabbit hole, which is a very dark and scary and just anxious place during the years of the previous presidency, and which I believe, I choose to believe, was in large part because of corporate decisions. And I think it's all part of our evolution, but I do often feel frustrated and lonely because I don't want to participate, and then I will have a little bit of a lapse and go and log back on, whatever you call it, re-engage, and then very quickly, no, I don't want to be part of that. So thanks for asking. I wonder if other folks struggle with that at all, have similar experiences.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Thank you, Lars, for sharing that.
Go ahead, Anjali.
Yeah, Mukunda has known for some time that I have the same struggle with this social media battle. I don't go on as much. And even recently, haven't gotten to the point where you have, where I just log out completely or shut the accounts down just yet, because I struggle with the same thing in terms of there are a lot of people that I went to school with or in my past that I really would like to, keep in touch with. So, and this is sort of the way to do that. But what I have done recently is, along with not going on as much, is I shut off all the notifications on my phone. So it's not constantly dinging at me when posts go up by other people. And so it's less screen time and a lot more being present in life and not scrolling or just, doing these mindless things on there. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's such a invasive thing that can be used for good, as we are using today, but it can also, I think it can cause a lot of suffering in many other ways. Did anybody else want to share?
I just think in general, there's, I think a lot of people, I know myself included, coming out of the pandemic, where we were kind of forced to stay connected via social media and such. And now, trying to re-engage with the world and leave that, it becomes a big challenge. I realized that for me, being shut down and isolated at home was kind of a luxury, and my inner isolationist kind of was like, oh, this is great, and now I have to go and re-engage with the world. But social media is like this, it keeps drawing you back. Oh no, you really don't have to. You can just text, or you can do a FaceTime, or set up a Zoom. Just set up a Zoom. You don't need to see anybody. You can order your groceries in, and it's, I think for a lot of people, it's become a huge challenge of how to re-engage with the world. And this is just kind of a little snippet of what I think the challenge of technology in general is to the human race, is how do we use it effectively and constructively rather than destructively, which is kind of what it's become, this horrible place of disinformation and anger and just, you know, just negative energy.
Mhm. Yeah, it feels like what I sense from this and kind of how I want to guide some of our discussion with this topic is this idea that we're longing for community and for connection. And even we're longing for finding out information about the world, you know, to what is going on in not just the lives of other people, but in other countries across the, you know, the world. How are we able to find like-minded people? Or even what I think can happen is, you know, looking at the other, being like, oh, I'm not like them. Ooh, look at that. That's awful. And kind of the poking and making fun and all of that. And what does that do? And so then we create this whole virtual culture of, you know, kind of like detaching and separating and segregating. And because at some level, we're trying to create an organization in our mind that helps us feel safe and helps us feel aware of our own human experience. But if we're doing too much of that virtually, I do think there's some negative things that'll happen because it's the human experience and the being able to be in a community of living, breathing people is unmatchable. Natasha, I see you raised your hand.
Hi. So it's very, I guess there's several different ways to take social media, but when the whole pandemic shut down and, you know, there was a mass isolation, I was a little bit more excited. At the station in Japan, and being able to talk to someone stateside because of the time difference. Everyone was at work or someone was doing this and someone weren't doing that. And I'm like, finally, everyone's at home. So I kind of had an opposite reaction. I got to get more in touch with some of my family members and learn a little bit more about their daily lives when I would not have otherwisely. So the way that I've always used my social media is kind of a way of reconnecting to people that I haven't connected. And honestly, I didn't have all of these accounts before the pandemic. Like I didn't use them, I didn't do anything with it. But now, like fast forwarding here, I have a friend all the way on the other side of the country that I've never even met, that I would have never been able to understand that there's someone who thinks exactly like me. And then there's nothing wrong with the way that I'm thinking, because then that has to be two completely different lightning strikes at the exact same moment. So maybe I'm not the crazy person. And so then there's comfort and understanding that there are people that maybe they're not in your immediate vicinity, but they're somewhere else that have the same kind of lifestyle choices that you have. And in that is kind of where I'm starting to understand that I can search for my own community virtually and physically.
Thank you, Natasha. Excellent point. I think that's a good reminder. I think sometimes I was even getting into it's all bad, but there is actually there has been a lot of benefit. And I think what Tim was alluding to is like, how can we focus on that part of it and rise these points about how to use it? Because essentially it's not the thing, is it, or I should ask, is it the thing that is the problem, or is it us? Is it the user? And then thinking about if we can change the way we behave around it. Well, if Natasha can have one experience, Lars can have one experience, Tim, which one's the real one? So is it the thing or is it all of us? All right, Mercy, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, for me, social media, I think it's a blessing for me, the way I see it, because I'm now communicating with you because of social media. I managed to do my 200-hour because of social media. And I attend your classes because of social media. And I advertise to look for my customers on social media. So for me, social media is a blessing. Maybe it depends on how you use it. I found out about integral yoga on social media. So everything for me is coming from social media. So I don't wish or think to avoid it.
Good.
Yeah, because it's connecting and makes the world a global village.
Amen.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts? It's so interesting we're going in this direction, but I love it. Steve Rose, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead, because you're asking, is it us or is it the social media platforms? And so clearly a lot of people here are using social media positively. And so I was like, well, why not take a look at the platforms themselves and the people that run the platforms? And with Facebook, there's been a lot of problems over the years with privacy issues, data breaches, and what was that? The Analytica thing where a bunch of people's personal information got given to a study. So Facebook is just famous for mishandling people's information and privacy. And then now look at Twitter with Elon Musk. And then Trump's back on Twitter because Elon Musk said, "Hey, come on back to Twitter, Trump." Like as if like Trump is Elon Musk's friend or something. So I kind of feel like the platforms, like the people that run the platforms, are not being responsible with our privacy and our information. So yeah. So for a lot of people, social media is a blessing. So for those people, I hope that the companies that run these platforms, I hope they get some kind of wake up call and pull things together, because like Twitter's at risk of just going away. Maybe not a lot of people care about Twitter because it's a smaller platform, but it could go away. So
is that a bad thing or no?
Might be what needs.
Oh, not a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of government and good people on Twitter that depend on Twitter's like really quick messaging capabilities.
Yeah.
So for the good people on Twitter, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, because a lot of businesses were using it as well to kind of like do their daily posts, but now it's kind of like being boycotted. So they're probably just going to have to shut the whole thing down, and it's probably going to have to be rebranded or just gone altogether.
Or the taxpayers will end up having to bail it out, which is typically what happens. So a mega billionaire like Elon Musk buys it, runs it into the ground, and then the taxpayers end up picking up the bill to keep it alive. So
yeah,
and that's really the corporations and money are where the problem is, and that's always been the problem, no matter whether it's technology or anything else in this country. The corporations really are the ones that have the power and the political means to affect anything they need to have affected. And their rules are, I'll do whatever it takes to make more money, sell your information, allow hate you know, speech on my platform, allow bots and, you know, just horrible things out there that are just preying on people. And boy, that's how we deal with that one. I would love to have the answer. I don't quite see the way to address it.
Natasha, were you wanting to chime in on this?
Yeah, it kind of seems like the same problem over and over and over again. So the thing that we know to be true is that everything happens in balance, right? There's good, there's bad, there's left, there's right. There has to be someone's opinion and someone who disagrees. But what keeps happening over and over again is there's only one person who makes decisions for all of us without any sort of yin to their yang. And so then we end up all in a miserable place because one person has decided what's best for us all.
Lars, yeah.
I mean, I hear that, and it's about the right use of power, and it's about not abusing power and using power in a good way. What really got me cooking again was reading this column by Jaron Lanier. I think that's the thinker's name in the New York Times, and he described Musk's experience as social media poisoning that would make him do such things as he's done on social media. And I said, oh, there's a mirror. Okay, I can see myself. Like I saw the selfish, nasty, hateful parts of myself or my younger selves in Trump. I'm like, oh wow, okay, social media poisoning is what I got, and I want a boundary, and I feel alone kind of in my pulling back from this, you know, legitimate way of connecting, which is so good for all of us in so many ways. So that's what I'm working through. That's to come back to Marc's original question. Like, this is where I feel a lot of sort of loneliness and ambivalence. Am I doing the right thing, or am I just digging in my heels? But I'm in a way responding to social media like I'm responding to my own drug use in the past. I've got a hard no. You know, I'm not gonna do hard drugs. I don't want to poison myself or poison other people by getting involved in conversations where I'm like, I hate you, you know. This is where I see the most recent shooting and other shootings have some kind of seed in these online systems where we don't really see each other. We just objectify each other. And it's nice to speak that out loud, but that's what I sit with a lot.
Thanks, Lars. Steve Rose, did you want to say, is that the current hand up?
Yeah, that is. I don't know if I'm repeating something that's already been said, but one of the things that was coming to mind was, like, Elon Musk, I think, is the richest person in the world right now. And so it really kind of brings home to me, like, what the rich can do. That, you know, what part of what the extent of the rich have is, you know, kind of power. And then, you know, I look at it like, okay, what if I was Elon Musk? You know, if I was rich and got the opportunity to take over a social media platform, you know, like, you know, would I make the same mistakes? But while trying to be empathetic towards him, at the same time, I'm like, God, you know, he's just like a spoiled child with billions of dollars, and he's wreaking havoc on people's lives because over half of Twitter has been fired by him. So it's like all these people have lost their jobs just because Elon Musk feels like they should lose their jobs. And then you go back over to Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, and I think he still has controlling, he's got controlling interest he has 51% of the shares. So basically he can do whatever he wants with Facebook. He has controlling interests. So it's just kind of, social media is kind of showing me like the divide between the rich and then the everyday person. It's like, yeah, it's a bit concerning, but I'm glad at the same time, like at least Facebook is still viable for all the people that are getting positive. I'm concerned about all the people on social media that are getting positive benefit from it, because the rich people that are running their platform are kind of making it not viable anymore. So, but I guess the new social media will always pop up.
I wonder if, like what Natasha said, there'll be, the balance. And so we're just in that uncomfortable period where it feels like it's swinging way far to one side, and it's hard to hang on, when it is in that place to feel like anything is ever going to be different or going to change. But can we be in a place where we do recognize that is the nature of life? We go through cycles. We go through the swinging of the pendulum far to one side, far to the other. And it's just going to be our human nature, because we're beings that seek comfort. It's all the way down to our cellular level. We're gonna hold on when it feels comfortable and pleasurable and try to make that last forever. And then we're gonna scream and be upset and uncomfortable when it all goes away. And when we can start to see like, oh, this is part of a cycle. What if I stayed in a place of clarity and as much grounding as I could and witnessed this movement? Could I make any better decisions? But like Steve said, even the most wealthiest person in the world can act like the biggest baby. And so what could happen for someone like that? What if they had a practice where they were able to, settle and ground with some of that? Kinjal, I see her raising her hand on, yeah, go for it.
I also like, so for me, I always wonder, it may appear like, oh, he's acting like a child and doing something foolish, but I wonder what the underlying motivation is, and what is, because oftentimes we think about just the action that wealthy person did, but I almost think like, wait, what is 2 steps after? What is this person trying to get to? And the other thing is stirring the pot, because, of course, this is just an example. Every day there is an article. One day it says, "Oh, coffee is slow poison." The next day it says, "Coffee is actually good for you." But the point is, even let's assume for a second that that article which says coffee is slow poison is true. This whole, like the current events, I feel in the past, it may have been like, yes, it's uncomfortable, but we're kind of okay with status quo. But maybe sometimes stirring the pot is actually good, because that may be necessary to affect change.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that's, how I feel.
Thank you, Kinjal.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think what I've tend to contemplate when we have these talks is that on one level, being able to get perspective is a stepping back and being able to not get entangled. But on another level, we want to engage because we do live in the world, and we need to do it in a way that's thoughtful and hopefully beneficial and not causing more problems. So if we can get in a place where we can first review and do some sort of self-reviewing of what is our motivation, what is this, what action can we take that will have a positive ripple and it won't actually become more of the problem. And that's what I think has, for me, been always a question. Like, is this going to actually, am I going to help create change and be that ripple for good? Or am I going to actually just add more fire, more gasoline to the fire, and we're going to just burn everything down? So how do we figure that out? How can we regulate so that we're not just becoming, adding a mess? I see Anjali has been, I forget, sorry to check the chat here, so it's probably a little behind, but I'll try to see if it might relate to And it's, so she was talking about social media in its own way. It can be a sense of community depending on how you use it. Be mindful in the ways in which you interact with it. As the user, yes, it's our responsibility to remain mindful of your personal usage, whatever feels right to you. It's precisely the reason why I won't completely shut it down. Yeah. So it's like, it almost sounds like, because I know Anjali, we've talked a little bit about this, but she's taking this big break from it. And I wonder if it's almost like a fast or a cleanse. And then maybe if you were to go back to it too soon, you'll go back into it in this habitual way of like back and forth and good and bad. But instead, what if I can take a break from it and then re-engage with it in a way that could be a positive tool? That again, it's not the thing, it's me. So I've done the work. I've made that change to come back to speak clearly in a way that I can be a change agent rather than, you know, somebody who's causing harm. She said, hence it's what's happening with Twitter, just what Steve Rose said. So they will have to rebrand it probably because it's being boycotted right now. Yeah, good. Is that a current hand up, Steve Rose?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then I want to go on to some more topics. So let's have another comment here.
Yeah. So I kind of realized what the topic of this, I kind of got distracted by the social media topic from the main topic. And the main topic here is how do we break out of old thinking and old habits that are keeping us stuck? So yeah, and Anjali was talking about, how basically Twitter's going to have to make some changes, rebrand, whatever. And then you mentioned kind of the pulling back, and some other people mentioned the pulling back from social media and then taking a break and then maybe coming back with like a different viewpoint, which could be helpful to the platform, could be helpful to, the communities on the platform. So I thought with Twitter, some people say it's at risk of getting shut down. Some people don't. But isn't Callie like she has a sword and she cuts off the head of the ego?
Callie.
So I'm kind of thinking for people who are obsessed with Twitter, if they could step back and then just let Callie's sword swing down like a pendulum and then cut Twitter out, then you'll be disconnected from that obsession.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, solution number 1. Let's make note.
Invoke Callie.
Invoke Callie.
I closed my Twitter account as soon as he took possession.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't support him.
There's a lot to
What's happening?
were you talking?
Oh, me? I was about to do something.
There's a lot to refraining, and for me, a lot of it's about refraining, just choosing to refrain. Like the news broke this morning, and in the old days, I would have read every little word about every awful thing because there's something so catching about trauma. And I said, no, I'm gonna focus on feeling and being with people, and not go that direction. So I don't want to end up in depression. So refraining from engaging in the over saturating with media and stuff like that is important for my mental health.
It's a good one. Yeah, it's like setting those healthy boundaries, because it's not that we're all supposed to be at this same place of our work that we're doing and the evolution that we're doing. But I think it's helpful in these Empower Hours. What I really value is our individual experience to learn to feel more trusting and honoring of that, and also to just educate ourselves, to where we might be holding on to a belief system, and maybe through the conversation we offer some ideas and thoughts for one another. So I'm going to shift back here to our slides for just another few moments. It's going to shift our direction just a bit. And I do want to just look at our Thanksgiving moment. And this was actually in history.com from this year. In 1621, the Plymouth colonists and the Wampanoag shared an autumn harvest feast that is acknowledged today as one of the first Thanksgiving celebrations in the colonies. For more than 2 centuries, days of Thanksgiving were celebrated by individual colonies and states.
But not by that tribe, because they were wiped out before the next holiday.
Exactly. And so it does, to give history.com a little credit, they do go into that part of the story. But I just find it interesting. This is the leading paragraph of that article that will probably be the one most people hang on to. And then the little details of the story where they do go into are like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't that great. And these people did get wiped out by, 90% of them. But, there was still this, we have America. And it's this idea that we're clinging, we're holding on to this part of the story, because I don't know about most of you, but I know for myself, this is what was in our history books.
Right.
And we didn't have much else that was a contrast until, much later.
Didn't have any of it.
Yeah, or there was either zero
Just
or
had the branding statement of this was the wonderful moment that happened. What a great tradition. And isn't this great? Where'd the Indians go?
Right.
Yeah, and so sadly, this is where this is what I'm really curious about. So then what happens is we've developed this whole ritual, this whole Thursday evening dinner ritual that actually ends up being about stuffing our faces and having such a bounty of all this amazing things to be like, we are so great. And it's actually in our brains. And I mean, it was in my brain for so many years. And what changed it for me was when I became a vegan and eating a plant-based diet. And I started thinking differently about, okay, instead of turkey, I said, well, wait a minute, I'm doing a whole habit switch around this. And I'm actually learning, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like this whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. The part that does make sense, and that I think to celebrate, is that it becomes a communal event for family, for friends, and that's beautiful. So I don't want to say that that's something to throw away. But we need to, I think it's that reinvention, again, sort of that taking a step back, contemplating, reviewing, and then stepping back in with a beautiful tradition. And, I've been calling it a giving thanks holiday. Okay, I'm going to take the part of it that's about gratitude, appreciation. I'm even going to appreciate the fact that there is misinformation that I've now been able to break through. I'm grateful, that there's all this other information that I can have. And I'll just share, here's on insider.com, participants in National Day of Mourning, so that's the day after Thanksgiving, honor Native ancestors and the struggles of Native peoples to survive today. The commemorating plaque that this is from this article they were talking about. It says, it is a day of remembrance and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of the racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience. To me, that is the truth. That is history, because I feel open, to be able to have that conversation. But I also know there are many people who get uncomfortable to read something like that statement because of the attachment to the previous version. It's like, oh, you're making me think. You're making me consider that all this nostalgia and sentiment I have is wrong. It's like, no. Don't. It's just something that wasn't included before in the conversation.
And if I may add,
yeah,
it's also there's so much fear and hurt to, even though it's not you and it was many generations ago that colonization happened or however it went about, but just to say, that happened in the past and we can still acknowledge it, take accountability, just that's the land we're on. But like you said, taking the giving of thanks, and it doesn't have to be that, especially for white identifying people to be like, no, you're the bad person. It's not that anymore. But I think there's so much fear associated with it sometimes. And maybe it's like also feel like tradition. No, wait, this is my holiday. Now you're telling me that I have to. And hopefully we can work to, cross that bridge and help people understand that it's not about that. It's not about holding people today responsible, but it's just like, yeah, acknowledging a fact that was of history, and yes, it was not pleasant, but how can we make peace with it?
Well said. I want to take a brief look at some things, just again, a little bit of a sobering part of the conversation here. To look at, this is from the United Nations, they have an office on genocide prevention and the responsibility to protect. I actually didn't know that till I found this. I'm like, a whole office, that's their mission. And this is their offering about what are the crimes against humanity. For the purpose of this statute, crime against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systemic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. So I'm just going to quickly go through this list because I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I just felt like for us to just contemplate what's happening in the world today, to let this be, I'm sure I went all the way back there. Hello, trigger warning again. Here it is. Murder, crimes against humanity, extermination, enslavement, deportation or forcible transfer of population, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law, torture, rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity. There's also persecution against any identifiable group or collectively on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender as defined in paragraph 3, or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law in connection with any act referred to in this paragraph or any crime within the jurisdiction of the court. And then 3 more bullet points: enforced disappearance of persons, the crime of apartheid, and other inhumane acts of a similar character intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health. So that's quite a list. And I just felt like in reviewing this, recognizing how much harm is being continued on this planet, how much of this isn't just happening to others, but to us, how much of this we may think isn't happening. Human trafficking, child labor, worse, abuse. And so on some level, we don't really do anything about it because in our mind, we're also believing like, oh, it's being taken care of. But actually all of these are getting worse and worse and worse. And certainly over the pandemic, I saw an article where human trafficking was on the rise, like it's higher than it's ever been. Little aliens from outer space. I have a comic strip here and it says they're looking down at Earth and they see Earth like having all these explosions and they're just chaos happening on the planet. And the little aliens are saying, as near as I can tell, they're fighting over which religion is the most peaceful.
And loving.
And what?
And loving.
Yeah, we're the more loving. And it's just an irony, you know, I don't want to bring too much of the religion conversation into this because this could really explode our topic today, but we've certainly talked about social media. We've touched a little bit on politics. I think there's something to talk about how religion can be this thing that joins us, brings us together, but also can obviously cause quite a bit of harm, to disagreements. It's a beautiful thing on many levels. I appreciate my upbringing with it. But it also can cause a lot of harm. I like these 2 quotes from Friedrich Nietzsche. I thought Philip, who's my friend from Germany, who's visiting, I thought he might join, so these were in honor of him. But he says, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. This other one I thought was pretty profound. There are no beautiful surfaces without a terrible depth.
Yeah.
There are no beautiful surfaces without it. Yeah. And so kind of is, again, in honor of what's happening with our holidays this week, it's like, there's definitely some beautiful components to it that are maybe we see on the surface, but let's remember how we got here. Let's remember even our whole human path, our whole human history has not been one where it's just been always peace and loving, but a lot of harm. Here's where we have a couple things I want to bring in, and this is a little delicate, but I just saw these and I thought it's interesting. The Golden Temple in India has a message that translates to say, we have our God's blessing. God won't let anything happen to us. On one level, beautiful, right? How beautiful to have a belief system that's going to protect you from anything. But on another level, what does that do to our psychology when we hear something like that, that singles us in a particular way that we don't have anything really to worry about? And then this was in particular to the pandemic. It was brought up where at the Golden Temple, it's a Sikh temple, they weren't wearing masks. They're like, we're not going to get COVID. Our God wouldn't let that happen to us. And then to be something more closer to home, for you are a people holy to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people of his own possession out of all the nations that are on the face of the earth. And it's Deuteronomy 14:2, which is referring to the Jewish people. And that was how I was raised. And I actually remember this as a child. Like we were always told, we're the chosen ones. I was like, yay, we're the chosen ones. And it was sort of, it felt harmless, but then the more I thought about it, and then of course, as an adult, it's problematic in some ways, depending on how someone interprets it. So it's interesting to see what messaging have we received, through our lifetime, and all of us in our own religions can think about that. This is from the Washington Post, and it's a conversation about how nationalism can actually help democracies. But the part of the quote was, nations are imagined communities. Imagined because citizens will not encounter most fellow citizens face to face. Yet nations are still communities that fulfill a deep and basic need for human connection in the modern world. Comes back to this idea of this desire to belong, to want to be a part of. And even though when we talk about nationalism, we're not going to ever meet the millions or billions of people that are part of our community, but it's this sort of feeling that we want to be a part of. And I think it is, again, that natural instinct within us to have that desire. And sometimes it's for beautiful, good things, but sometimes it's going to want us to kill the other side.
Mark, if I may share one,
Of course.
just thought, as I have been digging deeper into yoga philosophy, something that has come up is that this whole duality is, at least in terms of a societal construct, is so man-made, right? Like you said, and just the association with religion, but that's just one aspect of it, right? There could be a lot of different aspects where if we come across something or someone that is other than us, the first thing goes up is fear, or it's like, oh, this is not this is the other. And oftentimes we are programmed to think that the other is something to be afraid of, the other is something as a threat, instead of saying, oh, this is just diverse. But at the end of it, like, this whole duality is just man-made construct. I don't know. Sometimes I feel that, especially in our society, but I just wanted to share that.
Well, I mean, getting back to talking about yoga, I think this is certainly a deep part of the conversation where we look at the nature of the human experience is dualistic. We can't help but to be aware of that because we have self and other. But the practices help us move beyond that to see that, okay, yes, it's sort of like the both and. Yes, there is this separate thing. We can touch, we have sensation, but we also have other sensory experiences that are beyond the basically animal level experiences. And we can shift our consciousness to say, oh my gosh, we actually are all the same. We are all connected. We just forgot because we've been so influenced by all these external things, which include social media and politics and religion, even our parents, and all the marketing branding of the world is trying to help us see we're not enough. So what can we do? And where's that resource that inspires something within us to say, oh, I can I can start to disengage from all the external things, pratyahara, disengage the physical, the senses, and start to tune into that frequency inside that has a higher band of intelligence, basically. But nothing promotes that. Like nothing in our culture promotes that. It's like, well, that doesn't exist. You can't quantify it. You can't touch it. You can't market it for that. Exactly. And if you do, I think what happens, that's maybe where religions become, try to take hold of that. And they're like, oh, we know what it's, that other subtle realm is. And here's what the message is being told. You are the chosen ones, So everything can get manipulated. So that's why having some practice where we listen to our own internal resource, own internal compass is, I think, the key here. The more we can spend time on that, it awakens that humanity in us to say, oh, I can see the illusion of all this other stuff. I'm going to walk through that and attend and water and nurture the things that make sense, that actually are going to help uplift one another and help, maybe create that change we're all talking about. Let me just finish a couple more slides and then
Before you go on, Vitasha had her hand up.
Oh, Vitasha did? Okay, good.
Oh, no, I'm fine. Go ahead.
You sure? All right. Okay, so this next one's a little bit long, and I think I don't want to go fully into it, but it comes back into this interesting surge of nationalism that I started to research a little bit more, because I feel like I'm noticing that all across our planet, this sort of what maybe Trump inspired in trying to cultivate and develop his following, and then the ripple effect that's happening in other countries. In Brazil, borrowing this very similar phrase, and Hungary, even in India. And so it's just this interesting ripple, and the power that can happen with thought, and the power that can happen with speech. On one level, I think it's incredible, right? I mean, we look at all the things through history where there's been a lot of harm from one person. And Kinja was kind of saying this, that this, or maybe it was the Steve Brothers, now I'm trying to remember, but just like the person who has the power, and then all of a sudden, the ripple effect something like that can have. But what if there is a different value on what the powerful people were, and the powerful statements could be?
And a lot of the nationalism is really just another way of saying we are the chosen ones.
Exactly.
It's that way of isolating and saying we're better than, which is what's always led to the most horrific events in mankind. Just horrible things, because we think we're right and everybody else is wrong.
It's that polarizing, that seems fashionable, right, to the human experience.
And what changes is, as you've been saying, is our individual commitment to our own self and to the planet. And I think we saw a little bit of that in the election we just went through. The build up to this election, everybody I met was so fearful and was projecting it was going to be so terrible and so horrible. And I kept saying the whole way along, I think it's going to be good, because they've woken everybody up. The Supreme Court striking down Roe v. Wade. All these women are now going to come out and vote. And it's in the youth is coming up through the ranks and now voting, and they don't want to have anything to do with this bullshit. Pardon my French. They just don't want to deal with it. And so I think it's a good thing. And I think change happens, whether we're ready or not. And I think that it could be just the tip of the iceberg, I'm hoping.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is the end of the slides. So we actually have more time, so I'm going to stop the screen sharing. But that was just a kind of a good segue to think about the kind of the global, the macro scale of how we see all of this operating, and then the microcosm of each of us. And to be able to see our influence on one another by the messaging we do, by the choices that we make, by the continuing of habits that we do kind of mindlessly. Well, I guess we're just supposed to go and buy all these things at the supermarket. I'm just supposed to make this 50-pound turkey because I don't know, that's what you're supposed to do. But what if we said, I'm going to disrupt the way that this works? Because actually, not only is this whole ritual one that doesn't make sense, but it's actually not a healthy one on the level of my physical health, digestive health, mental health. And what if I do something that disrupts myself on that level, and then it maybe makes a ripple? And then when I invite friends over for that Thanksgiving, and they're like, oh, that was different. Actually, that was really fun. Oh, I actually feel really good. And then they have one, and that's my dream. But it's just interesting to think about how we can be those little agents of change, where something inspires us, we create that new way. We take that break from social media. Our friends are aware of it. Hey, I'm not seeing you on there, if that's something we need to do. Or like Mercy, we're the ones that are putting through all these positive things. All of Mercy's posts, you know, she puts in positive thoughts, and she's not trying to side with like, you should do yoga or else you're stupid. It's this really beautiful offering, right? So, you know, is it the thing, or is it where we are and what wave that we're jumping in on, or what we're causing as the ripple? Any thoughts?
What keeps coming up every full moon, I was blessed to work at Tassajara, and we would chant with the Zens, all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, this now I avow, over and over. And I think that one of the gifts of having a lot of Shempa and struggle with social media, with politics, is I've seen my own shadow. I've seen how intense I can be, and I think if I dare, I could teach other people that, you know, we are shadow and light. We are complex. We're not all or nothing. We're not like woke versus anti-woke. You know, it's okay to feel sad, and it's okay to regret what we've done to the Native Americans. It's not off the table, because, you know, that's part of our experience. Somehow we've got to realize our projections and own them, rather than push them over here and get angry at the other, the so-called other. That's what I'd like to dedicate to. So thanks for bringing this.
Beautiful. I see Mercy then and Vitasha. I'm not sure who is first, but go ahead and unmute if you know. Okay. Go ahead, Mercy.
I just wanted to share something about, let's say, people are suffering, but are we able to stop suffering? I can see as if we cannot stop suffering, and people will continue to suffer, and one by one they will realize the enlightenment, the truth, and they will less their suffering. But as I teach and interact with people, and these days before my class we share stories, and people, they share their personal stories. They are going through a lot in life, most of them. And they, even if you tell them what to do, what you think, they are not ready to change. So I think that's our nature. In the stages, as I said, people are not on different stages of life. Some are a bit realized different stages. So I think we'll continue suffering, the governments, everything, but you cannot change the next person. You can only change yourself. That's what I think.
Mm. Thank you, Mercy. I love that you're letting your students share in that way. It's beautiful. I think you're having compassion for all of the different stages that people are at, rather than thinking, why aren't you doing more of this? And why aren't people doing that? But to just say, we all are on our own path. And that's where I feel like having some kind of a practice lets us all naturally unfold in our own way, rather than it should all match this way of thinking or this way of being. So anyway, I love those thoughts. Let me bring in Vitasha.
So I was actually on the same brainwave as Mercy. It's there's always truth. There's always more truth. There's always your truth and someone else's truth. There's a different side to every story. That's just the nature of our lives. Some things are hidden and some things are very apparent and very obvious. But if we want anything to change within ourselves or within our outside world, the first thing it seems like is that there has to be some sort of disruption. I'm not saying an angrily one or a violent one, but people don't just change because they're happy where they're at. There has to be some sort of push to say, hey, what you're currently doing is not the thing that is okay for you. Maybe you want more, then you should have more. But until you want more, you don't get more. So as much as and as great as it is, like I grew up living next to the Trail of Tears. So this truth has always been understanding that people died. Lots and lots of people were murdered in this country because someone else wanted their land. And so then that's something that I've always like lived with and understood. And it's never something that I picked up a book and read about. So I guess in the discussion today, I just say the only thing we can ever do is just spread what we know and say our own truths. And that's how we change the world. It's just being honest for once in any way that we can.
Wow. Thank you, Vitasha. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this. This definitely has been very inspiring for me, and I hope for each of you. I feel like I'd like to see if there's anybody that has any last thoughts that has been participating, and then if we have just 30 seconds or a minute of silence to just let this kind of soak in and to be with where we are. I see that Steve Rose raised his hand.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, a person is free as soon as they believe they are free. So kind of back to like, it's kind of up to the individual. So we can all be free. It's every single individual can be free, but it's up to the individual it's funny. It's up to the individual to decide that.
There's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of complications in our country with that too, because of rights that are, taken away or disrupted. But I think I've read that in a lot of spiritual texts that it does ultimately boil down to that. But I want to say that my part two of that is when we awaken that internal truth, I think it empowers us and maybe emblazons us to then say, okay, now I know what I need to do to help others. Instead of just what tends to happen and what our marketing and capitalist world wants us to do is to continue to self-soothe. A lot of spirituality has turned into this, I just need to be comfortable. Oh, I can't handle this. Sometimes we do need to do that, yes. But is that our perpetual effort, is to try to be comfortable versus awaken, and to become more aware of what's true and then more inspired to be of service.
Can I share one thing that just came to
Oh
me?
yeah, Kinjo. Why don't you have our closing thought?
I just laugh when I see on social media and there will be like a turnout and a week and a positive vibes only.
Thank you, Kinzo.
Her audio didn't come through all the way.
Oh yeah, sorry, because she's on my phone. I'll have to think about that for next time. She basically just said she notices on social media sometimes people just do like a little peace symbol, peace hands and wink wink, positive vibes only, and like disregarding everything else. And that doesn't seem to be a spiritual practice. It's more of, just attachment to comfort. All right, my closing slide. Thank you all. See you for December's Empower Hour. This will be a special one because it'll be embedded in the Wellbeing Fair. So we have our Wellbeing Fair on December 18th from 1 to 5 p.m. So 1 to 2:15 p.m. Pacific time, we'll actually have our Empower Hour happening live while the festival is beginning. So I hope you all can come and mark that on your calendars. And
Share.
the last thing I just have to say is, don't stop believing. Hold on to the feeling. Street lights, people. Oh. All right, thank you all.
Don't get me started.
I know. And also just a quick little side note, that was Tim started the Journey Fan Club back in 1984. So that was also a nice little tie-in of the Fan Asylum years, this place being where I used to work at the desk at Fan Asylum, and here we are today. Transformations. All right, thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
And thanks everybody on Zoom, and thanks Tim and Lars.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. We'll see you all next time. Be well.
Yeah.
Before you guys leave, before Mukunda leaves, I wanted to
Yeah.
weirdness that happened today, right? I was driving past the road and from Georgia to Virginia, and there's these massive like cotton fields. So I pulled over and I stole some cotton.
Nice.
Mine.
That's your cotton. Yeah.
Nice.
Well done, Natasha.
Love you. Bye.
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 See ya. Oh,
Bye.
thanks, Mercy. Good you. I'm so glad you joined.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Mercy.
Get some sleep.
Okay, see you tomorrow, Steve.
Yep, see you tomorrow, Mercy.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
See you, Steve.
See you, Tim. See you, Lars. Bye, the Marc Bros.
Bye, Steve Bros.